Shalom. First off, and give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Chakwadash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of great millstone rule well, as well as double honor to their elders. Peace and blessings to 144,000 pushing his word without truth and sincerity, as well as peace and blessings to all the believers of Yahweh Shai. And it's going to be part two of the lesson I was doing, going into the Gentiles, responding to priest Genesis mode. Non-Israelites receive salvation and none but a bunch of lie. And it is fucking clickbait because these guys need money. As you can tell, they got all four. They got whatever the fuck, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, Zelle. They taking it all. They are doing this for filthy lucre's sake. They're not in this truth for in sincerity. They don't sincerely care about feeding Yahushua's sheep. They don't care about salvation. They want to make it here in America. They don't care about being saved themselves. If they did, they wouldn't be pushing these fucking lies. But without further ado, let's get into it. Hitting on the Gentiles now, because it was a common thing amongst Israel that we've been scattered amongst the nations. So let's start here. John 7 and 33 says, Then said Yahweh unto them, Yet a little while am I with you, and then I go unto him that sent me. Ye shall seek me, and shall not find me, and where I am, thither ye cannot come. These Jews, they didn't understand that Yahweh saying he going to the right hand of the Father, to the spiritual realm. Verse 35, it says, Then said the Jews among themselves, Whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? If it was just one Gentiles, there was no difference right here, why would it be said it twice? If it was just the Gentiles in the actual heathen nations, because that's the first one means, and then the second one is talking about the Israelite foreigners. Now, if it was just the heathen nation, all it would have said was, "Will he go unto the Gentiles and teach them?" That's how it would have been said, But it don't read that way. Let's read it again from the top. John 7:35. Then said the Jews among themselves, Whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? The Israelite foreigners. Let's pull out this word for dispersed here in the interlinear. And it's the same word that's found in James, the first chapter, James 1 and 1. Dispersed. G1290. Diaspora. Under outline of biblical usage, it says a scattering, dispersion. It says of Israelites dispersed among foreign nations. The definition too is basically saying the same thing, because the Israelites were called Christians first in Antioch. So it says of the Christians scattered abroad among the Gentiles. Same thing. The Israelites that scattered abroad among the actual heathen. So that's what the diaspora is. The scattering of the Israelites. Then said the Jews among themselves, Whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? Go into the Israelite foreigners and teach them, while they're amongst the heathens. That's what this is saying right here. Another example, proving that, it was known that there was a scattering. Tobit 13 and 3, it says, and this is in Apocrypha, which is canon. Tobit 13 and 3, it says, Confess him before the Gentiles, ye children of Israel, for he hath scattered us among them. You see, it's been a scattering according to the curses. That was one of the curses, Deuteronomy 28 and 64. We'll be scattered. And we're scattered unto this day, But let's go into some of the history now, of the Greek captivity. You're not going to find, because in Daniel, the second chapter, he outlined, 4 captivities. Assyrian, Babylonian captivity, Medo-Persian, the Greeks, and the Romans. Now, where can you read about those captivities at? In the scriptures, man. But you got to go to the Apocrypha, to read about the Greek captivity. You're not going to understand this mystery while we're going into this history of the Greek captivity. Or, it'll be a stumbling block if you just read Romans 1 and 16, without having an understanding of this Greek captivity. But let's read this right quick. Romans 1 and 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Yahweh Shai, for it is the power of the Most High unto salvation to everyone that believeth. Those Israelites, and it's about to say it right here. It says, to the Jew first, those that were in the land, keep it raised up in the laws, Benjamin, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, those 3 tribes predominantly. You had pockets, of the northern kingdom here and there. But mainly, it was Benjamin, Judah, and Levi that was left behind. It says, so this who speaking about here, to the Jew first, it says, and also to the Greek. And why did it say and also to the Greek? Because that was a scattering. The Israelites were calling themselves Greek. You know, and let's pull out these words. Let's go back to John 7:35 right quick. Pull out this word for Gentiles. I don't know if I did or not, but that word for Gentiles, it goes into in this verse right here, it goes to Helen, which Helen, basically means those Israelite foreigners, but they didn't know that they were Israelites. They just thought they was Greeks, period. And then you have the Hellenistes, which were Greek-speaking Jews, which you're gonna get that later on as well. But this is Strong's G 1672. Helen, under outline of biblical usage, it says definition 2. In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. So this is how the Israelites became Greeks, making the language, customs, know, their own. We were raised. The Heavenly Father gave us the law, statutes, and commandments. That's what we were supposed to abide by. But you had wicked men who were willingly, wanting to go and keep the law, the ways of the Greeks. And we see those same men today, joining this damn Greek fraternity and shit. They all about that shit, masonry and all that shit. Our people just completely through, but the Heavenly Father's calling us up out of that state. So let's get into, let's read into it now. The history, which the whole book of Maccabees is good. I implore you to go read it for yourself because I'm not about to read, the whole chapter. I'm just gonna hit some points, to prove the point. So let's begin here at First Maccabees 1 and verse 7. It says, so Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And the Greek captivity, this is one of the 7 captivities that Esau Edom has had control of. Evils were multiplied in the earth. The wickedness came because you are the wicked of the Bible. The so-called white man is the wicked, Esau Edom. It says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137 year of the kingdom of the Greeks. 137 year. This is when Antiochus, the fourth Epiphanes, began to rule. Quick Google search of Antiochus, and then we're gonna. He's also written about in the Old Testament, in Daniel the 8th chapter. We're gonna read that too as well. Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes. He came out of Seleucus. I always forget that. had to Google it right quick. Because Alexander, he had 4 generals. Seleucid, Lysimaeus, Ptolemy, and Cassander. Those are the four generals of Alexander, and from Seleucid came Antiochus. So let's read into that in Daniel 8, and then we're gonna go back to First Maccabees. This is Daniel 8 and verse 8. Daniel 8 and 8. It says, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and it's that he-goat is speaking about Alexander the Great. It says, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. And these 4 notable ones are his 4 generals. Once again, Cassander, Ptolemy, Lysimaeus, and Seleucid. Now it says Daniel 8 and 9. It says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn. And this little horn right here is speaking about Antiochus the fourth, Epiphanes. So, and out of one of them, and he came from Seleucus, out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great, toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. It says, and it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped on them. Now, and the stars represents the Israelites. The Israelites are spoken of as stars. When in Joseph's dream, he's seen the 11 stars. I believe it as well as in the Revelation. Is that Revelation 12? It mentioned the stars, but the stars you're speaking about the Israelites. So, and it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. It says, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. It says, and an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. He put pork upon the altar. He made the people sacrifice profane things. But that was the point I want to get from out here. Let's go and continue on in First Maccabees, the first chapter, verse 10 again. It says, "And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137 year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, very wicked." It says, "who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow." They was tired of catching hell under this Greek captivity. They said, well, let's go be Greeks, so we can go, basically dwell in sin for a season. It's the same thing going on today. History just repeating itself. Well, let's jump down here to verse 41. First Maccabees 1 and 41, it says, "Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath." You see, this is how the Israelites have became Gentiles, by following the customs of the Greeks. This is how they became Hellen and Hellen basically. Those Israelites that didn't know that they were Israelites. They just thought they were Greeks. So let's pull two precepts right quick. First Corinthians 12 and 2, it says, "Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led." See, that's what made us Gentiles, serving the idols, following the ways of the heathens, And how can it, if this was talking about an actual heathen, that would be, stupid, because nobody can change what they were, the Heavenly Father has set for you. An Israelite is always going to be an Israelite, no matter whether they follow, following the ways of the heathen or not. They can't change their bloodline. They can't change their seed. Likewise, the Gentiles, the heathens cannot, turn themselves into Israelites. They're always going to be a heathen. They're always going to be a true Gentile. So it says, "You know that ye were Gentiles, carried away into these dumb idols, even as you were led." Ephesians 2 and 11, it says, "Wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh." See, the works that we did in the flesh, that's what made us Gentiles, serving those idols. Once again, "Wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who were called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands." Those Jews in the lands keeping the laws, who grew up in the ways of Israel. They were calling them, uncircumcised, Israelite foreigners. But let's keep going, read a little bit more into First Maccabees, the first chapter, in verse First Maccabees 1 and 42. "And every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath." You see, as you go on to continue to read in the story, Mattathias and his sons, and the believers that were following them, they didn't consent. They fought against this. And Yahweh Bashem Yahushai delivered them. He was on their side. So it said, "Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath." It says, "For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts." So this is a whole bunch of wicked shit, that the Israelites consented unto, man. 2/3 of our people ain't shit. And we can see why the 2/3 gonna have to be destroyed. These are the same people, that consented unto, the Greeks back then. They back today, Just consented unto Esau and happy here living in Babylon, just doing whatever the fuck they want to, living as a heathen. Oh, happy with being moles and bowls, and just eating abomination. Let me keep going. First Maccabees 1 and 47 again. "Set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts." It says that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, so they weren't circumcising the males, on the 8th day anymore. It says, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. So you name it. Jacob was just wild out, abominable unto the heavenly Father with all manner of uncleanness, just living wickedly. It says to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And that was the mission of the heathens, as it says in Psalms the 83rd chapter. Let's read that right quick. They wanted us to forget that we were the people. They were, because they knew that when we had the seat of power and Yahweh Shem Yahushua was on our side, there's nothing they could do against us. They would have to be subject to us and tributary. So they tried to cast us off and make us forget that we were a people. Psalms 83 and 2. Might as well start at 1. Psalms 83 and 1. Keep not thou silence, O power, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power, for lo thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. You see? They have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. So all these heathen nations, consented with each other, to try to keep us away from being, the knowledge of who we are. Going back to First Maccabees 1 and 49 again, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances, and whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. You see, so this was, you had to become a Greek or die. You see, and as I was mentioned before, Mattathias and his son Judas, they didn't consent. They fought against this. You can go into reading the story for yourself. But all that just to prove the point. We became heathens by following after their dumb idols and their ways and their customs. You see. So when you see Gentiles and Greek in the New Testament and it's accompanied with salvation, well, you got to understand that those talking about Israelites, not literal heathens. So we'll end it off. Well, I already read this one, but let's read it again anyway, and then we'll end it off in Acts the 6th chapter. Romans 1 and 16, it says, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Yahushua, for it is the power of Yahweh unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. That's what the prophecy said, in I believe it's Zechariah. It was going to come to Judah first, the tents of Judah, I believe as it says. But it says, and also to the Greek, which this is not talking about the literal Greeks. It's talking about those Israelites who were Hellenized, during the Greek captivity. Some the ones that didn't know that they were Israelites, the Israelite foreigners. Let's read this in Acts the 6th chapter. I want to pull out this verse because this word Grecian goes back to Hellenistes. But this is Acts 1 or Acts 6 and 1. It says, and in those days when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Now, once again, reading this without understanding, you think this is actually talking about some heathens, some Grecians. No, it's talking about Greek-speaking Israelites. They were raised up in the land of the Grecians, and so they spoke Greek. But it's not talking about actual Greeks. So we're gonna get into it. Let's read this and pull his word for Grecians out. G1675, Hellenistes. Let's see how they say it.
Strong's G 1675, Hellenistes. Hellenistes.
Hellenistes. It says used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek-speaking Jews. You see? Now let's see what it says right here. One who imitates the manners and customs or the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue. No, the definition 2. This is what it's talking about right here. Because they were Greek-speaking Jews. They followed the customs, in the law of the law, statutes, and commandment. They just weren't born in the land. So once again, Hellenistes or Hellenistes, it goes into used in the New Testament of Jews. These are Israelites born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. So these were Greek-speaking Jews, and they were complaining because they were being neglected, in the serving of food, And if you read this in NLT, it just tell you flat out, Acts 6 and 1 1 NLT says, but as the believers rapidly multiplied, there were rumblings of discontent. It says the Greek speaking believers complained about the Hebrew speaking believers, saying that their widows were being discriminated against in the daily distribution of food. Let's read this in the New King James Version. It says Hellenistes right there. Acts 6 and 1, New King James Version says, now in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplying, there arose a complaint against the Hebrews by the Hellenists, because their widows, what it says, Hellenists, what footnote, that is, Greek-speaking Jews, because their widows were neglected in the daily distribution. You see? Well, that's the point. Lord willing, the point was made. You can understand that the Gentiles in the New Testament accompany, with salvation is talking about, Israelite foreigners. You see. So once again, Abaratus, that a point was made, giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rachakwadash, double honor to the apostle and elders of great millstone who rule well, peace and blessing to 144,000, pushing his word without truth and sincerity. Shalom.